really want to become an iOS developer and do so as quickly as possible. I really want to become an Android developer. Yeah, or what about a database engineer? That'd be really cool too. You came to the right place. I got you covered. Okay, let's do that one more time. This is so weird. I just feel like it's fun. You came to the right place. I got you covered. Hey friends, today we are going to be reviewing Meta's new courses when it comes to iOS development, Android development, and database engineering. These courses will have you job ready in 7 months or less. We will be covering what exactly each of these roles and jobs entails, what the salary expectations are, and also, of course, reviewing these courses. Okay, let's get into it. Wait, before we get into it, if you haven't already, make sure to hit that subscribe button for more tech, coding, career-related content. If you have questions, I answer every single question of yours, or I do my best to. So leave down in the comments. Okay, now, let's actually get started here. Okay, where are we going to start today? Let's start with mobile development. Mobile development, because honestly, it's the kind of development that I really wanted to do when I first got into tech. I really haven't had much experience when it comes to Android development, but iOS, I would say I'm a tinkerer in. I like to tinker in Swift and play around with it because it's so visually satisfying when you see your app on screen come to life. You're like, wow, I made that. People can use it. It's pretty cool. But with mobile development, there are really two main paths that people choose from, Android and iOS. Now, your next question might be, well, Tiff, how do I know which one to choose? Which one is more in demand? What will be a better career long term? And although it's probably not the answer you want to hear, or maybe it is, the real answer is they are both truly in demand and both will give you a really great career. So what my recommendation is to you is play around with both iOS development and Android development and see which one resonates for you, because a lot of times when people do that, they automatically gravitate towards one. Now, that being said, of course, there are some obvious differences when it comes to Android and iOS development. With Android development, you'll be developing in Kotlin, which is a really high in demand programming language at the moment. With iOS development, also very highly in demand, you will be working with Swift. Before we get into each of these courses, let's talk about salary. As you know, I oftentimes refer, when it comes to salary and compensation, to levels.fyi. And I do this because it really is industry standards and it's extremely accurate. Why is this so annoying? Okay, as you can see on screen here, the total compensation package, the median, so the average, for an iOS development software engineer is around $185,000, and that is US. When it comes to Android development, we are looking at $174,000 US. And once again, this varies greatly based on company, based on years of experience. So as you can see, they're very close paying in pay range, and they can pretty much be the same just depending on what company you go with. Okay, now that we have salary out of the way, let's get into these courses, the meat and bones, the bones and meat. I feel like that's not right. Let's get into the iOS course. So Meta's iOS course really covers from beginning, if you've never even developed an iOS or worked with iOS at all, to expert and job ready. And how they can do that in such little time? Well, I mean, you're learning from experts in this industry, so they know what to cover, they know what's really important. When I look at the course, I can see that it starts with an introduction into mobile application development, followed by version control. I love that they cover version control because it's something that so many courses miss, and I see this really affecting people in the interview process. Not to mention when I went to a bootcamp and then went into the interview process with very little experience when it came to version control and they were asked questions around it, it's an area I completely flopped in. So I really give them credit for including version control. Next up is the programming fundamentals in Swift. And one thing when I was looking in this course and playing around with it that really stood out to me is, yes, of course, they are focusing on the unique aspects of Swift syntax, but also too, they cover the fundamentals of programming in general. I think it's one thing to be a developer if you know how to code in Swift or in any language, but if you understand the fundamentals of programming as a whole, it will really set you apart as a developer. So I think it's really great that they do that. Next up is principles of UX and UI design. As I mentioned at the beginning of this video, that's one of the things that drew me to mobile development initially, was seeing things come up on screen and just how in depth really UX and UI is. And that's something I didn't know at first, was just how much thought needs to be put into it. Okay, I'm gonna be honest with you. One of the things that I always look for when it comes to courses is, are they really zoning in on one thing and promising you the world, which will flop, or are they actually, setting you up for success? And one of the things that always stands out for me in a course is if you get an insight or get to have some learnings into the full software development lifecycle. And I think that's so important because it's one thing, as I just mentioned, to hone in on your skills and have a good understanding of it, but also to, if you can understand the full software development lifecycle, it will make you such a better developer when you are interviewing, when you are working with teammates, even if you want to freelance. I mean, it's very important if you want to freelance because you're the one doing everything. And with the iOS course, they also dive into React and React Native. And I really love that. So not only are you going to be learning about Swift and, playing around in that playground, but you also will be learning about React and React Native. And that is so important because it's so in demand as well. And it kind of gives you a taste. Of course, it's React Native, it's not just React, but it also gives you a taste into the world outside of Swift as well. And I think that's really important so you can get kind of a full picture. And of course, to finish it off, the cherry on top is a capstone project. This is great because you're really building something that you can then speak about when you are going for the interview process or networking. Make sure you make a portfolio or a project for your portfolio of something that you're actually interested in, not something that you're like, yeah, I guess I made this, but something that has a story that the listener can actually come along with. And I know it sounds kind of cheesy, but it's so true. Even when you're doing an interview, you want to captivate your interviewer. You want them to be interested and see that you're genuinely excited. And the last part of this course, which I think is essential, is coding interview prep. And this is a final course in the program that will help prep for unique and challenging aspects of the coding interview. If you are like me, probably are a little nervous when it comes to coding interviews. They tend to not be that enjoyable. I'm not trying to scare you away, but they can be very tough. And having the support of a course of expert engineers, of meta engineers, teaching you how to ace the technical interview, I mean, I wish I had something like this when I was learning how to code. All right, we finished covering the iOS course. Not to mention, I did not mention this. This is a huge highlight. You will walk away from this course with a certificate. And I think that is a great way when you are networking, especially with other Meta employees. Maybe you want to get an interview at Meta or one of the other top companies. To have this certificate that you went through this program really shows your dedication to it as well. All right, let's move on to Android. Not for any reason, Android and iOS, they're both amazing. Actually, I'm curious, which would you prefer or do you want to learn, iOS or Android? Or which one do you already work in? And no surprise, similar to iOS certification, this as well starts with, the introduction to Android mobile development, then of course, version control. That's something that across really all of these courses you will see is the emphasis on version control included in the courses, which I don't want to go on about, but it's such an important aspect. Then we work into the fundamentals in Kotlin, which I'm so happy they're focusing on Kotlin. It's completely boomed in the past few years and it just continues to skyrocket in demand. So I'm really glad that you get to focus on Kotlin. Then similar to iOS, you also will be focusing on the UI UX design side of things, create the user interface in an Android Studio. Fun fact, my first job when I was doing QA before I became a software developer, the application I was testing in was an Android app, or one of the apps was. And I would run Android Studio on my computer at the time and it would get, I honestly am surprised it didn't start a fire. Like it was just, it was crazy hot and the fan was going. It was just like, I felt so important running the most basic tests because of like all the noise it was making. Anyways, Android Studio, it's an adventure. After you have explored Android Studio though, you will be learning more about software development approaches. And after that, one thing that Android and iOS both cover is getting back into React basics and React Native. And I love that they do this as well for Android because once again, it really sets you apart having more skill sets. Then of course you will be doing your capstone project as well as coding interview prep. Now, Tiff, you might be asking, well, should I take one, the iOS one or the Android, or should I take both? And my answer to you is, it really depends. I would suggest focusing on one, achieving that, and then seeing how you are feeling. You definitely can take both, and it will also, of course, add to your resume, but it's also not necessary. Okay, let's talk a little bit about database engineering. Well, before we get into it, what exactly is a database engineer? Let's go to Google, our trusted source. So I'm scared if I'm going to tell you something and it's wrong. It's too risky. What does a database engineer do? Database engineers create and maintain databases. Okay, well, yeah, that makes sense. They design the database engine, processes for sorting and accessing information. So they use programming knowledge to build data pipelines and integrate new information into existing databases. And this is actually, it would be a really fun job. For my first job as a software developer, I worked a lot with databases, and it was so fun because, I mean, it depends on what language you are working in or what you are working with, but for myself, for example, I was working with Mysql, and it was so cool to see for my first time writing queries and how they're kind of similar to English, but they're so different. You feel like you're writing this like secret language. I don't know, maybe that's me nerding out, but I think this would be a really great job. Okay, let's jump into this course. So, as all the courses in this, it's taught by Meta. One thing that stands out for me right away is, of course, that they teach MySQL database management, data creation, querying, and manipulation. So similar to what I was just saying. They also teach you how to code and use Python syntax and how to prepare for technical interviews for database engineer roles. And I really like that because there's not a lot of database engineering courses out there that I'm familiar with anyways. And it's really great as well that they have in the preparation for technical interview parts because, yeah, the resources are not as much as I would say the other two we spoke about. Okay. Introduction to database, yes, that's amazing. Version control, we know that's with all of them. Database structures and management with MySQL. This is a great way. I really like how they added this in first because MySQL is pretty user-friendly. It can get complex fast, but pretty friendly to learn with first. So I really like that that's kind of your first introduction into this. And then it goes into advanced MySQL topics, which is a great way to continue to grow. And then they go into programming in Python, which is, I mean, Python is a great language. It's so in demand that the fact you're learning Python in this, I think is a huge plus as well. And you're probably wondering, well, I understand, I can visually picture what it would look like for a capstone project for iOS or Android, but what about for a database engineer? So for this capstone project, it's a really great idea. What they do is you'll demonstrate your new skill set by designing and composing a database solution. So this is something that I really think, especially with this course, will really help you stand out because I've never seen courses like this before, especially for database engineers, and I think this is a really great way to go. Then, of course, there is, as I mentioned, the coding interview preparation. Finally, for all of these courses I listed, once you complete one of them, or all of them, depending on your level of eagerness, you will get access to the Meta Career Programs job board. So what this means is it's essentially, I think it's around 200 employers that have committed to sourcing talent through Meta certificate programs. So they are looking for specifically people who have completed these programs, which is, I mean, it's a win-win. I don't know what more you would need as far as a straight path into Meta. And it's a great way to network with employers. They want you to succeed and they want to hire you. So this is something you will get once you have completed a course. And okay, the next question is, well, how long am I going to have to dedicate to this? Well, for example, if you were to do approximately 7 hours a week, which is an hour a day, which really is nothing, the program will take approximately 8 months to complete. And that varies program to program, but that's on average. So of course, if there's some keeners out there, you can do that even faster. And it's crazy to think your life, your career, your income, everything could be transformed in under a year or just over 6 months. Okay, we have, oh, I got my hair in there. We have reviewed the 3 courses. I was so excited to review Meta's new courses because I did a review a while ago on some of them and I truly believe in them. I got so many messages from you who have taken them and it's really transformed your career. So I was super excited to sit down and go through these today. If you have any other questions around it though, leave down in the comments. And as I mentioned, I will make sure to answer every single one of them. Thank you all for watching this video. Make sure to hit that subscribe button, and I will see you all soon. Thanks, everyone.